I'm not inside a policy-making organization, but I'll try to connect the ideas between statistics, data, policy, and development. We live in an era of unprecedented availability and access to data. A quote from Paris 21, "The world is generating more data than ever before. According to some estimates, 90% of the world's data were generated in just the past 2 years." While this is true, we also live in a world of data scarcity, because there are substantial gaps in the data we think we need to address societal problems. For example, another quote from Paris 21, in low-income countries, more than 70% of births, almost 20 million children every year, are not registered. If they are not registered, they don't become full citizens of their countries or regions. Therefore, almost they become invisible to the policies we think about developing. In addition to the problem of some scarcity of data, there are problems with the quality of data. Not all data that come to us, that we have access to, has the quality required for their safe use in many applications. This quote is from the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data, to which Enrico just referred to. There is a crisis at the heart of efforts to solve the world's most pressing issues, a crisis of poor data. This crisis is stunting the fight to overcome global challenges in every area, from eradicating poverty, to ending hunger, to empowering women, to ensuring health, to combating climate change. I'll briefly lay out one or two ideas about policy. Policy is a principle to guide our decisions to achieve rational outcomes. It is also a statement of intent. We have to describe what we plan to do. To implement policy, usually a set of actions or procedures called a program is put in place. And I'll now share with you some diagram of the policy cycle. Someone at some level of government, or jointly governments and other sectors, will define objectives and targets for a policy. A policy and program will be designed, and it will then be implemented, requiring production of inputs, the enactment of activities, and a generation of outputs. Hopefully, the policies will produce outcomes and impacts that are as desired. And I mentioned this cycle because it's quite important to connect this with the data requirements. At the planning stage, data are needed for diagnostics of the problems, from consultation with the main constituencies affected by the policy, and so on. Once the policy starts to be implemented, we need data for monitoring, and especially we need high-level indicators that can inform the top-level policy makers about the effects and the work of the policies. Finally, we should always, as already mentioned by Enrico, be policies and to assess whether what we intended the policy to do is happening or not. And again, we will need data for the process and impact evaluation steps. That is the reason why statistics has never been in such high demand and evidence. We are here today dedicating a full day about talking about statistics, and similar events are taking place all over the world. Okay? Statistical science provides the essential guidance required to obtain timely, relevant, accurate, and cost-effective data, the data we need to formulate and evaluate policies. It also drives the art and science of extracting meaningful knowledge from the data in order to support decision-making. I see statistics as the science that contributes for our many steps of finding answers to the questions that are posed by society, by governments, by people, by companies. Whenever there is a problem, questions are posed, we have to plan to collect some data, to gather the data, then to summarize, analyze, and share the data, and hopefully answer the questions that were posed to start with. So data, statistics, policy, and development are all interconnected. Then data and statistics have gained relevance and centrality in the political debate at the highest level. Policies are now defined towards achieving measurable goals, targets that societies aim to achieve. We, as a group of countries, have done that in the past by establishing the Millennium Development Goals in the year 2000, and we have done it again when established at the General Assembly of the United Nations on 25 September, we adopted the UN Sustainable Development Goals, one of which, for example, states explicitly, by 2030, we should eradicate extreme poverty for all people everywhere, currently measured as a people living on less than $1.25 a day. So the statistics is part of the goals or targets which are set. We will need to define policies to achieve that goal, but we hopefully will be able to measure whether these goals were achieved. A quick word on the sources or traditional sources of public and official statistics. Most of the time we think about data coming from censuses, which are operations where data are obtained from every unit in a target population. More and more we resort to using surveys or sample surveys where data are obtained from a sample of units in the target population. The reason being, these are much cheaper and faster to obtain, to produce. There is another trend which is picking up speed, which is using more and more administrative records, which are data gathered for administrative purposes, but which we are now exploiting for statistical uses. But there are new and emerging data sources, which I will call generically big data, data on transactions, communications, images, searches on the web, etc. You name it. All of these data share difficulties which come from their volume, from the variety of kinds of data we collect, from the speed to which they are produced, also about the quality or the veracity of the data, and whether or not they have any value to assess the policies and the questions we want to answer. Statistical sciences provide some of the answers to dealing with all of these data sources. It is the traditional method for designing experiments, sampling methods which are used in the surveys and censuses for observational studies. We also have the knowledge and the tools to deal with good data collection techniques, with the checking of the data, with the cleaning of the data, and with storage protocols. We also are the mother science for the methods needed to do exploratory and confirmatory data analysis, interpretation, and providing support for decision making. Statistics is the science which provided us with the tools for the exploratory data analysis, with data mining, machine learning, and knowledge discovery, hypothesis testing, methods for model formulation, fitting, diagnostics, and interpretation, and more recently, upward trends in data visualization and presentation. The world and society have become more visual, and statistics is adapting. While we have made very substantial progress in all of these fields in terms of the methods and tools we have available at our disposal, there are substantial challenges still ahead. Statistical illiteracy. Large portions of the world population are statistically illiterate. They cannot understand the notions of uncertainty of statistical estimates or some statistical concepts which are key to discussion in the high-level forums. For example, inflation. Ask anyone in your neighborhood to explain what inflation means, you understand how I say some of the world is illiterate. There is also substantial lack of professional statistical capacity. In most countries I have visited, statistics is a profession in very high demand. There are fewer professionals available than what the economy needs. And there are forecasts made by some global firms that certify to that as well. We have this challenge posed by these big and emerging new data sources that we still don't have complete answers how we are going to exploit and to deal with. And they tap into another issue, privacy concerns. Big Brother and big data are similar. Some people think having big data is similar to having Big Brother watching us. And we have had examples in the international arena where countries have exploited sources like this to do things which are not acceptable. Finally, in terms of the challenges, we also have still, unfortunately, groups of people or people in the political arena, sometimes at a very high level, which instead of doing evidence-based policy making, they try to do evidence-ignoring policy making. I live in a country where we have a very high homicide rate. Violence is a big problem for us. There is a group of members of our parliament currently discussing laws to make it easier for people to buy firearms. I call these people who are evidence-ignoring politicians doing their business. Briefly, one slide on how the ISI, the International Statistical Institute, hopes to contribute to this debate. We hold conferences and high-level meetings. Our next World Statistics Congress will take place here in Morocco, in Marrakesh, in July 2017, and I invite you all to prepare for this conference. It will be the biggest gathering of statisticians in the planet in 2017, and it will happen here. In conferences, we discuss the progresses and the research and the best practices in statistics. We have a range of publications devoted to statistics. We have the capacity to promote and provide advice on professional ethics and doing statistics in the public domain. We have just joined the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data. We are now one of the champions hoping to help people get the data they need at the time they need for decision making. And we have long-running projects on statistical literacy and capacity building. Besides this, we are an organization to which you can turn if you need to establish communication and network outside of your own country. And to recognize achievements in all of these areas, we promote a number of awards that are typically distributed in our World Statistics Congress. So we are very fortunate to be here today discussing how statistics can help policy and development, and I thank you for your attention today.